first taught you. Let's pray together quietly on our Zoom. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, when you're ready to go, you hit record, and then we'll get going.
I did hit record. We're good.
You did. We're recording. Okay, well, welcome everyone to our first in a new series that Elizabeth Foss and I are so excited to bring to you. We're discussing the book Real Learning, Education in the Heart of the Home. This is the first of a series of Zoom that we're going to do together as Elizabeth gets ready to re-release this book. When did you first write the book? When was it first published?
It was over a few years, like 2 babies worth. 2 pregnancies worth.
What is the copy? I didn't even look at the copyright date, but this
I think the copyright date
is getting a fresh face.
I think it's 2002. I think it's 2002. But but I was pregnant with Nick too, so before that. So
20 years. 20 years, and here's 2.0 about to come. So we're going to be unpacking every chapter of this book together. As Elizabeth sent me some notes for what we want to cover tonight, and I actually teared up reading through the notes a couple hours ago because I was just so overcome with, this is so good and so helpful. And the first thought I had was, I wish that I had this when I was thinking about homeschooling so long ago, because this is just what every woman needs who's even slightly thinking about homeschooling, to have someone walk through this beautiful just introduction to what it is and what it can be for you in your home. So I'm just so thrilled that we're doing this together.
It's well, a couple things. So in the chat, and we encourage y'all to chat, but Colleen Cannell is standing by. She's an experienced homeschooler, but she also has had kids in school and did that crazy thing, whatever it was called last spring, where we brought them home and quick hurry, tried to figure it all out. So Colleen's going to be capturing questions and answering some for us too. But one thing about this new edition is I didn't have a digital copy of it. I don't know, lost a computer 20 years ago. I really, there's no excuse, but I didn't have one. And the publisher somehow didn't have one, which I don't really understand. So it had to be re-keyboarded before we could do anything with it. And Colleen did all the keyboarding. And I think it might have been 2 years ago when I said, we should keyboard this just in case, maybe we'll do it. But I was so dragging my feet, because it's hard to go, okay, first of all, I very rarely read something I wrote. So like we've done a ton of books for Take Up and Read, and I just don't go back and read them. I've started more like talking about the essays that other people are reading as we do it, because I'm doing daily lives that Take Up and Read on them, but I just tend to not. And I kind of wrote the book and I didn't really, I don't pull it out and read it every year. Like I have other books I pull out and read every year, but not this one. Anyway, so I pulled it out to read it really carefully for the first time in a really long time. And my thought, people are like, oh, I wish I had this when I started homeschooling. My thought was, why in the world did you not reread this every year? Like, why? What were you afraid of that you didn't remind yourself of this kind of idealism and this philosophy, and it's all here, and it's just such a good kick in the pants for me. So that was really cool. Like, it's just really cool to go, you know what, I like this book even more with 20 years perspective. And what I'm doing with the new edition is kind of at the end of every chapter saying, basically, how did that work out for you, kind of thing. So how are, what does it look like 20 years later? And so the child who was born right around the time this book was published is starting her senior year in high school. So her entire childhood. The one who was born during the writing process begins his first year at college. So it just seems like a good time to say, all right, let's see how this went. But for people who don't know me, I have 9 kids. We started homeschooling right from the very beginning. I was a teacher who was really frustrated by what I was seeing in my classroom when I was pregnant with my first child. It was just, I just saw like the school system, which was actually quite a good school system, but from the other side of the desk, and I was like, there's got to be something more that we can do, something else that we can do. And so we've homeschooled from the beginning. We've homeschooled all of them all the way through, with the exception of my 3rd child, who spent a year in residence with the US U17 men's national team for soccer. So he had a year of high school away from home. So he was the only one who really did that. Now we do, when our kids get to high school age, we do a lot of dual enrollment credit. So, you know, it's not just all me. My 6th child starts college this year. They've all gone to college. They've all that have been ready to, like, graduated. We've got 2 with graduate degrees. We're celebrating today because my 3rd kid, the one who went to the national team, is going to Notre Dame to get his MBA. He just decided that that is a thing. So he's heading to South Bend like next week. Mad scramble, but yeah, so that's my kids. I have 3 still at home. 1 will be a senior in high school, 1 is 13, and 1 is 11.
Okay.
So
what you propose in the book Real Learning is a lifestyle of learning. It's not just
100%.
The 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., here's your curriculum and this is your school day plan. You are proposing in the book Real Learning an entire lifestyle.
Yep.
And with that, an entire mental and heart shift from the mother's perspective, looking at her home and her family and her children. And
for sure.
a very holistic approach, much more holistic approach than looking through a curriculum catalog that comes in the mail and trying to pick what math program to use. This is a totally different thing.
It's all in.
Yes, but
that makes it, I don't want to say easier, but it's what makes it work, I think, is that it's a lifestyle and it's not like bound by time or space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what we do in the schoolroom from 9 to 2. That would never work for me. And I think that's what a lot of people had to try to do last spring. And it was very frustrating. Mm-hmm. Where this, when you consider the whole and everything, every part of what's happening in that child's life is considered part of the child's education, it actually simplifies it, if that makes sense. Like, it's not, it's just, this is what we do. And it's a perception that the parent has about what we do that influences everything she does. So, and you know, what I propose is draws heavily on the philosophy of Charlotte Mason. And
let's talk about that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Charlotte Mason. So Charlotte Mason, so she's, at the time I wrote the book, not everybody in the world was like a Charlotte Mason person or knew about Charlotte Mason, but she heavily has influenced a generation now of homeschoolers. But she was a British woman who had no children of her own. She lived in the Lake District in England, which is where Beatrix Potter was also from. I think there was some really good things in the water in that Lake District. And she was an Anglican, and she founded the Parents National Education Union, PNEU, which is probably the first homeschool support group. But she had some very definite ideas about education in Britain, where children were kind of seen and not heard. the wealthy children were more or less raised by their governesses, and the children who weren't so fortunate were not very educated at all. And she was trying to equip parents to be educators of their own children. And then the other person I think that really influences the book is Edith Stein. So Saint Teresa Benedicta, who is completely different realm of life from Charlotte Mason. She was killed in World War II. She was a Jewish woman born Edith Stein, and she converted and was an educator, a nun who was an educator, and she was a Carmelite. So she's a girl after my own heart. And she had a lot to say about the education of women in particular. But there are a lot of parallels in what Charlotte Mason thought and what Edith Stein thought. And there's a lot that the parents can draw on in terms of what's the big idea. And I think that's the thing. Tonight we want to talk about the big idea. What are we doing? What's the overall picture? And it was so easy last fall to get caught up in the micro, in the daily, how are we going to do this? And to almost have to jump into that before we had a big picture of it, because we were jumping literally from a day in the classroom to, oh, wait, we're all homeschoolers now. Where now, it doesn't have to be that way. You know, we can get a little bit, and it's not too late at all for this school year to get a big picture of where are we headed? What do we really want here? And I think that the right place to start, even though I know that some people are going to be frustrated because they want okay, what do I teach right away? But let's just hang with me for the big picture. So the right place to start initially is Charlotte Mason's motto for parents, which is education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. So she gives you 3 pegs to hang your big picture on, and 3 very specific things to think about when you initially start to have a global philosophy for homeschooling. So we think about the atmosphere, we think about the discipline, and not just how are we going to discipline our children, but what is the discipline of our lives? And frankly, how do we discipline ourselves? Because when I look back on 28 years of homeschooling, the places where we've had weak years or we've let things fall through the cracks are the places where I haven't been disciplined, like where I really needed to reread the book and recommit or have a buddy hold me accountable. So I think that we begin with atmosphere, discipline, and then life. And the life part is, honestly, it's what you were saying, Stephanie, like it's everything. All of it counts. From the time they get up in the morning through bedtime. And honestly, I did a bulk of my teaching at bedtime. So, so the atmosphere, we look at our environment, and this is where I'm also kind of influenced by Montessori, because Maria Montessori was all about a prepared environment. And I really do believe, and this is not, oh, the whole house has to be clean and everything has to be organized and you have to like have everything. But I believe that your house should be a prepared environment. I think that if your children, whether they go to school or not, they're living there, they're learning there. And we need our homes to be prepared environments. So think about the atmosphere of your house. Think about how are you preparing your environment right now for your children to learn well there. So this is kind of a joke in my house, but we start with books. You know, books are really truly the backbone of their education. Our book collection is absurd. It doesn't have to be that way. we went to our library today, and you know, you can walk in and pick up your book, and you can chat with the librarian. You can't go past the front door, but libraries are back a little bit, and certainly we don't all have to buy all the books. But over the years, we have definitely collected a lot of books. But this is what's like key to the books that are in the house, and really, really important, because books are going to shape their worldview. They're going to affect how they speak and how they write and how they appreciate language and how they look at art and who they become. And I'm not overstating it. Like, books are really important. So we like what Charlotte Mason people call living books. And I have a list here of how to judge whether something is a living book. And to some degree, this is, you want a book that isn't a textbook, like not written by a committee. That's an important thing, because books that are living books are books that grab hold of somebody's imagination, and the author really is conveying a spirit to the audience and not just imparting information. So I have a list from one of my very favorite mentor, period. Sally Clarkson is a personal friend of mine, but she is my mom figure in a big way. And she's got a list of what's a living book. So a living book is written by a single author, a real and knowable person. A textbook is written by various authors or contributors, usually unknown. A living book is a literary expression of the author's own ideas and love of a subject. A textbook is non-literary expression of just facts and information. A living book is personal in tone and feel. It touches the heart and emotions and the intellect. A textbook is impersonal in tone and feel. It touches only the intellect. The author of a living book addresses the reader as an intelligent and capable thinker. In a living book, ideas are presented creatively in a way that stimulates the imagination. In a textbook, facts are presented without creativity in a way that deadens the imagination. Now, I can think of books that can be used as textbooks are used. What came to mind immediately is the History of Us series, which is a series of 10, I think, maybe 10, American history books written by Joy Hakim. And she's a single author. There's a lot of creativity. She reaches out to the reader. She does all these things. So it's still a textbook in the sense that you can use it as a spine. You can plan a whole history year with it, but it breathes. And that's the difference, I think. So of course, you know, when we look at picture books, we want to be sure that they're, I mean, C.S. Lewis, and I'm going to botch this quote, somebody can maybe find the quote, but C.S. Lewis says basically that any book that any book that a child reads should be something that an adult appreciates too. Like we don't dumb it down for a kid. And Charlotte Mason called books like the dumbed down books, and like the one that comes to mind right now is Captain Underpants. I don't know why that came to mind, but one of my kids said today, tell him not to read Diary of a Wimpy Kid. But Charlotte Mason called those books twaddle. And there are lots of twaddly picture books too. So we want to look for picture books that have like high quality, high language, really good art. Like the arts is as important as the words in a picture book. It's a picture book. So books, math picture books too. Like we have lots of picture books that are math picture books. So books everywhere, books in baskets, literally all over the house, because they'll pick them up, they'll read them, especially if you are limiting the other things that would capture their attention, like telephones or smartphones or TV screens. You know, if the television's going, they're not likely to pick up a book. But if they if they're a little bit bored, then they will, and they won't be bored anymore, and they'll be getting smarter in the atmosphere of a learning home. So we're going to talk more about books when we talk about teaching reading, but books. What else? Let's see. Atmosphere. Art to look at and materials to create art. And I think that we're pretty liberal around here with materials to create art. You know, we try to make sure that they have materials to create art. Let's see, music to appreciate. I thought about this when I was rereading like the music chapter in the book, and what a boon Alexa is to this whole thing, and how easy it is to just infuse the house. You know, if this is the month you're studying Bach, you can just Bach all you want. And what a great thing, you know, how well technology can serve us in creating an atmosphere of learning. Invitation to help in the kitchen. I cannot overstate this. When I talk about education being real learning, the kitchen is what comes to mind most.
Right here, honey.
If you, oh, wait a minute, I just muted you, Stephanie. If you invite your child into the kitchen and you're available, all kinds of amazing things happen. Like just kids, that is creativity, it's math, it's language, it's communication, it's science, it's everything. And when they grow up, they are amazing cooks who can really, truly bless their families, regardless of whether they're male or female. I mean, I have boys who are literally fabulous cooks. I'd love to eat at their house.
And then gardening. You mentioned gardening too.
Gardens, yeah, like for sure. We're in a new house. We've been here 3 weeks, and it's really hard for me to pull myself inside. The garden here is just giving and giving and giving. But one thing that just delights me is my girls just go out there on their own. You know, they're digging, they're turning over dirt, they're saying, what can we put here? They're identifying plants. They're like, gardens are just, even if you only, you know, can plant a pot or two on a balcony, let your kids grow things. So that's, you know, that's atmosphere. And then I think one of the things that we want to talk about when we talk about the discipline of homeschooling, I think this is where, when people say it's hard, this is what's hard.
Yeah.
And it's not that disciplining our kids is harder because we homeschool. It's that you are with your children almost all day long, and you have to be disciplined to get it done. You have to be disciplined, and you have to discipline. I had a conversation with one of my kids today where she very rightly said, you should have taught me this a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, and you didn't want to do it then either, and you don't want to do it now, and I let it slide then, and now we really need to because it's time. And that's on me, you know, and I told her that, you know, it's hard to constantly do the hard thing. And depending on what your hard thing is, in our family, like we let math go. Oh, yeah, you don't have to do it today. Way too many times. I would never do that again. But it's a lot of discipline. It's you know, the discipline of the heroic moment, you know, when Jose Maria Escriva says, get out of bed at the first alarm, you know, and conquer that first thing in the day. Stephanie, you did a story yesterday, maybe, on how critical the morning is for you, like your morning before the kids ever get up. And I am 100% in with you. Like, it makes that's the deal breaker. That's whether the day is made or not. It's all in the discipline of morning.
Right, and it's really choosing to do it too. For some personalities that are naturally disciplined, naturally very ordered, naturally love teaching, you know, different things, it might be a little easier. And for some who would just like to just not be a morning person and have a loosey-goosey day or a loosey-goosey schedule, we don't have the choice for that, to have the well-disciplined, well-ordered homeschool that will bring peace and joy. Like that's the end game, really. So some of us have to really choose, as you said, the heroic moment, have to really just buckle down and do it, even when it's not fun.
Yeah. I also think, you know, so Charlotte Mason talks a lot about habits and how important habits are even before curriculum. Like habits can make or break you, and make or break them, and really make or break them for life. So she talks about the habit of attention, and she wants you to train children to pay attention. It struck me when I was going through the book again, you know, this week, I started thinking about how much harder it is to keep and capture their attention right now, because we are competing. You know, we're competing with so many more things than I competed with when my big kids were little. You know, there was no little computer you held in your hand and could go all kinds of places. There was no social media. There was no, I don't even think we had cable. Maybe we had cable, I don't know. But we had dial-up. I know we had dial-up when we started homeschooling. It was just very different, and there just wasn't as much, you know, their friends weren't in their pockets all the time. They weren't accessible. And even my kids who don't have phones, it feels like their friends are way more accessible than they were, you know, for my big kids. So the habit of attention, and one way we do that academically is we read to a child, or we have a child read, and we tell them before we read, you're going to need to tell me everything you learned or everything you can remember about this story. And you give them a reason to hang on to the story. And then you have them repeat it back to you. And if they're older, you have them write it. And that trains them. And you only do it for 10 or 15 minutes at a time. But oh my goodness, we have kids who cannot pay attention for more than a minute, if that. So if you can get a kid to pay attention for 15 minutes, they are well ahead of the game. The habit of inquisitiveness, curiosity. You know, let them explore the environment. Let them dig in and ask questions and take things apart. It's just that sense of, I wonder, and then not just Googling it, but I wonder, and oh, well, let's go find out, and find out by exploring and being inquisitive. The habit of orderliness and neatness. So this one, so I'm a little bit compulsive about order and neatness. I will admit that. However, in hindsight, looking back at all the times that I required this of my children, I will say that household chores raised up good, healthy, self-sufficient human beings every bit as much as anything academically did. Holding my kids accountable to helping in the household, especially, you know, when I had 8 or 9 kids at home all the time, their help was like not negotiable. They had to. There was just no way to do it without everybody's help. But those kids who learned how to be helpful at home and how to be held accountable and how to follow through on a household task, like all those things are, I believe, they're every bit as valuable, and they were every bit as valuable to their academic success. You know, once they did go out into the world, once they did go to school, that kind of discipline, in the sense of, I know how to be assigned a job and see it done, or I know how to see a need in my community, which, you know, growing up is my house, my people, my family, and answer that need without even being asked. That's what we want. That's what we want from them as adults. So that habit of orderliness and neatness, I'm 100% a proponent of that, for sure.
Can you unpack a little bit of how you did that? Because you have a lot of kids, you have all different ages. How did you do chores? Like, did you have a system you followed, or did everything rotate? Like, what happened?
I definitely had a system. I did not have a chore chart. I mean, I made chore charts. We all made chore charts. Raise your hand if you made a chore chart with me. We made chore charts, you know, like, and I never could follow them, and it became more organic. But what the chore chart did is it organized it up here for me. It made me think, what needs to happen? When does it need to happen? Who is capable of doing this and helping me with this? So we had schedules, but first of all, I never did star charts, like, or tokens or anything like that, because that is a management system that I can't follow through on. I was never a good administrator of it. And also, you know, frankly, I've been known to tell my kids, you have to help because we need you to help. You have to help because you live here and you're part of this community. And I'm not going to bribe you to help, because you just have to help because it's the right thing to do. So go do the right thing. My kids have had like rotation of who has to do the dinner dishes, you know, as they got older and there were more of them who could do the dinner dishes. You know, that would rotate. A couple of my kids were always much better with babies and toddlers, and kind of got out of doing the kitchen because they were more than happy to just walk away with a baby on their hip. You know, one thing we have always done, and we're doing again, is you get your driver's license, and all of a sudden you sit down with me, you learn how to meal plan, you learn how to make a grocery list, we talk about what the budget is, and you are now responsible for grocery shopping for however big our family is. So, you know, when Michael was 16, I had 6 or 7, like he was shopping for a family of 8 or 10, or I don't even know how many. I can't do that math. Anyway, my kids were shopping for large numbers every week. And you know, I took them to the grocery store. I taught them how to do it, which for any chore, whether it's scrubbing the toilet or doing the grocery shopping, somebody's got to teach you how. So they did it with me. And it was really interesting. Last spring, Katie had a dance injury, and she was my next driver up. She did not yet have a driver's license, dance injury, couldn't go to dance. She was recovering from surgery. And so she was my grocery buddy, and we got in this really nice habit of going to the grocery store together and loving it. And, you know, it was a very organic teaching of all the things, no pun intended. She knew Trader Joe's inside out. And then there was a pandemic, and we shut down big time, and all the grocery shopping was Mike's to do. Like, I didn't leave the house. And then right before we moved, she got her driver's license, and now we're here, and Mike was gone. And Katie is doing all the grocery shopping in a brand new town that has a Trader Joe's. So there's a little bit of, but she's meal planning, she's grocery shopping, and she on her own accord is cooking too. But all of those things, like, that is really, really important. And there's a lot of managerial and organizational and critical thinking and research, all of it goes into that. And that's just one like household responsibility to look at. But there are lots, and even for littler kids, you know, I did make lists. So on the back of the bathroom door, it would tell you exactly what order to do exactly what thing to get that bathroom clean. And I had those lists on the back of every door, like on the back of your bedroom door. The one for the family room was on the back of the mudroom door. You know, here's how to do laundry. Like, there were lists. And the nice thing about a list is once you've taught them what's on the list becomes the dictator and you're not. And we'll talk more about this in the chore, when we talk about chores, because I have a whole chapter on chores, but do them and do not feel at all guilty about taking away from school time to teach them how to do household things, because they will all have households and they will all need to know those things. And the work ethic you're developing is worth its weight in gold. So
that's awesome.
That's true. So kids, the Charlotte Mason motto for kids is I am, I can, I ought, I will. And I love this. I'm just like, I love this motto so much. So I am. I went to a public university and got a degree in child development, and they were all about building self-esteem. And this was, you know, right about the time that Barney the dinosaur was in his heyday, and everybody was special, which meant nobody was, you know, and, but it was all about like, who are you? And you are special. And we tell our kids that the great I am is Jesus. And you are his, and that's who you are, and that's what your identity is. And because of that, you are special. And it all hangs there. It's all there at the foot of the cross. And we teach them from the very beginning that they are made to know, love, and serve God, and that's their mission. And serve is a part of it. So you might be special, but your special power is figuring out why everybody else is special and how you can serve them. So so that's the I am. I can. So I believe in letting kids do their thing and figure out that they're capable. And my kids probably have to do more things for themselves than most kids do. I don't let them get frustrated, and I try to set them up for success. But the other thing is, when you have that many kids, you know, at one point we had a lot very close together who were still really little. You can only do so much. I mean, they're going to have to figure some things out for themselves, but it's intentional. And when you tell yourself it's intentional and they're figuring it out for themselves, and you recognize the educational value, you've just taken a lot of stress off yourself. You don't have to sit there and do every single math or watch them do every single math problem. Now, I will tell you that when I have been negligent about math, my penance has been in the catch-up phase to sit there for every single math problem. So do math every day. Have I said that enough yet? Do math every day or you will pay. I ought. So I ought is developing a habit of duty, of a kid knowing that they need to do what is right when it's right away. And that's a habit of control. And that's what we want. We want kids who go out into the world knowing they can master themselves, that they're in control of their own self. And that will stand them in good stead, frankly, when other people are trying to control them, but also when they don't want to get out of bed in the morning and go to that first morning class. And they've been taught the habit of a heroic moment, the habit of, you know, get up and make your bed, get up and get dressed, get up and get your breakfast, you know, get up. And a lot of kids go to college and have a hard time getting up. And so I ought. And then I will. So a lot of times in the last, 30 years, I have moms say, I can't homeschool. And they're either homeschoolers who say this, or they're people who have told themselves they cannot and will not homeschool. I can't homeschool because my kids don't listen to me. My kids don't obey. So is that really a homeschooling problem? I mean, I think this is a parenting issue that needs to be like head on. If your kids don't obey, that's an obedience problem. If your kids don't obey, then regardless of whether they go to school or not, we need to work on obeying. So we need to work on the I will part of I am, I can, I ought, I will. So when there's a discipline problem, usually the first place to look is mom's self-discipline. So if you have a child who is a discipline issue, you need to look at your expectations and what you're doing in the follow-through. Like, if you have expectations and they're clearly stated expectations, and what happens when they don't do what you ask them to do? You have to have a result there. And you have to be consistent, which means you have to get up and you have to go to the child and you have to turn off the TV and you have to do the hard thing. And so I am, I can, I ought, I will. And that might be the kids' motto, but a lot of times that's our motto too. So I don't want to get too bogged down because we've got a lot to do and not very much time left. We can require obedience, we can insist on obedience, and we can work every single day to ensure obedience. When we ask a child to do something, we are polite. We explain the necessity if that is an appropriate thing to do. You know, if you're saying to not run across the street, maybe it's not a good idea to stop and explain why. And we want that. We want our kids to be able to obey right away because you said so. Because in some instances that's really important. But also we want our kids to learn to obey us so that they can ultimately obey God, and they can do it from their heart, you know, that it comes from within and not because they're afraid of the punishment.
Right.
So
just to wrap up, just to kind of bring together what we've talked about so far, which has nothing to do with curriculum or the lesson plans. This is an approach of education. The whole point of education that you are advocating here is not the mind, it's the heart. Because if the heart is rightly ordered, everything else will come and everything else will fall into the proper place. So instead of starting with the mind, Charlotte Mason, Edith Stein, the book Real Learning, which we're discussing chapter 1 right now, is this idea that education begins in the heart. And as you have blogged for the last many decades, in the heart of your home too, and how this is not just sitting down with books, but it's a whole well-ordered life of order and virtue and discipline and helping each other too, every single member of the family helping each other, and that's where education starts, and that from there we go forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great encapsulation. And I do think that, you know, in hindsight, the places where it fell apart, the years that were really hard years, were the years where I wasn't as disciplined as I could have been or should have been. You know, and whether that was because we had a lot of babies together, or, you know, everybody was dying the same year, or, you know, I mean, there were legitimate reasons that things fell apart. But it's a school of virtue for all of us. And I think that women grow in virtue when they take this on in a real, very real way.
Can I ask you just real quick, what were some of the things in your life that helped you stay disciplined? Because I struggle with this too. I get bored with it sometimes, or I want to be distracted. I tell my husband that sometimes I would so much prefer to spend the whole morning folding the mountain of laundry than sitting down for math or to do a reading lesson, just because I don't want to do it. But what were some of the things in your life, or did you put people in your life that helped you when it was hard to be disciplined?
I think it helps when you have people in your life who help you to be disciplined. And that's a double-edged sword. You know, the years that we co-opt and I had to be accountable to other women to have my kids prepared or to have my lessons prepared for their kids, I was disciplined. I also burned out. you know, I just like that pace, that relentless pace was hard for me. And I remember driving home after co-op, pregnant with my 5th child, just thinking, oh my gosh, I just want to sleep the rest of the day. I cannot do this. But those women held me accountable and they kept me on pace, and that was good. I think it helps to have a friend who keeps you accountable. It helps to have someone who will be honest with you and say, you know what, you're slacking. You know, you could change this or this or this and get back on track. I think that you can there can be seasons in your life where you really do. I mean, we had a couple of years, like a spread of years where it just seemed like everything that could go wrong would go wrong. We had some pretty serious things going wrong. And I think that the kids who were at critical learning ages in those years definitely suffered. In hindsight, probably should have gotten some tutors going. Probably should have made more of a concerted effort to call in help. And I think that is something that we all need to look at in a really realistic way. You cannot do everything. You will have seasons when you need help, and it's okay to ask for help. The problem is that a lot of us can't afford that kind of help. You know, you've decided to homeschool, you have them home for school, you can't really hire out teaching. And can you hire out cleaning? Can you, like, I don't know. Or can you just ask somebody to help you through a tough season? And I think that's when I really, that's the thing that I really struggled with the most, was admitting I needed help, because I felt like okay, we kept them all home, we're responsible for educating them, and if I need help, somehow I failed in that. And I think that was a mistake, for sure. And we try to go back and we try to catch them up. And, you know, I talk about my math penance, but oh my goodness, I've sat through a lot of let's get caught up in math. And I know college algebra so well now. I can crush it. But it wasn't pretty. And also I've had to admit to my kids, you know, yeah, I should have made you do more, or I should have done more then. And now we're going to have to catch up. And that's the reality. But that's also life, you know, that it's not like we have to be perfect for our children, because they're going to go out into a very imperfect world, and they're going to have to work with a lot of imperfect people. And they should be so lucky to have an imperfect person who admits they're imperfect and says, can I sit next to you and can we catch up? That's, you know, that's ideal. So I think it's okay to admit you can't do it all, and it's okay to admit you need help, and it's okay to collaborate with a friend. Like, all those things are fine, and you are not less of a homeschooler or not a good success not a success as a homeschooler because you're not superhuman. Like, none of us are. Everybody has gaps. Karen Andriolo talks about home education being like a hammock, and there are holes in the hammock. Like you think of a good Nag's Head hammock has holes in the hammock, but the parts that are knotted and the structure of the hammock and the materials it's made from, that hammock will hold, and it's strong and it's beautiful for the holes. Nobody leaves school without holes. Like, nobody does. Now, you think of all the things that you learned in school, and then think of the things that you didn't know and you learned as an adult. Like, nobody leaves school without holes. So your kids are not going to leave your house when they're 18 years old and they're going to be perfectly formed and educated. And by the way, that means in virtue too. I mean, I don't think that our kids leave our houses fully formed in virtue, because every adult I know is still growing in virtue. So why wouldn't my kids be still growing in virtue? And you have to let yourself like rest in that a little bit, and know that you're not going to cut it all. You're not going to turn out little cookie cutter perfect human beings, because then the thing you find out too is that they bring their personalities to this in a big way. And you know, some of my kids are incredibly gifted in one area and struggle mightily in another. And we, by the way, we teach to that. We teach to the strength, for sure. If you are really good at something, then I'm not going to spend a million years making you do something you're terrible at. We need proficiency in that thing, whatever it is, but you know, we're not going to beat it, because let's go spend time doing the thing you're super good at and getting even better at that. And that's borne itself out pretty well as my kids have gotten older and chosen careers for themselves. You know, they've gravitated to the things that they're really good at, and those happen to be the things that they did when they were younger. And, you know, most of my kids will say, yeah, we didn't really do enough math. Did I mention that? We don't do enough math.
I'm going to get you a t-shirt. I'm going to get you a t-shirt that sounds
Just
like
do math.
Oh my goodness. Well, can we only have a couple minutes left in our first evening tonight. Could we talk through some practical suggestions for making this atmosphere, discipline, and life work in the home? Because many of the women on the call tonight probably follow you on Instagram, and they've seen pictures of your beautiful bookcases and your beautiful gardens and think, Elizabeth's over there having tea with her children for hours every single day, reading Keats.
I have dirt under my fingernails. We had smoothies in the kitchen and not tea.
What's a good place to start? Like for some women who might not have bookshelf after bookshelf full of books and
right, for sure,
have a garden, don't have some of these things. What are a few practical things to start forming this home environment?
So I do think, I think this summer is a perfect time to, even if you don't have any idea, a lot of us don't have any idea what the school year looks like, it's a good idea to bring some of these things into your house, because most of what we've talked about today are not limited to homeschoolers. Like, everybody can do this. So, so I would, I'd get up and have a routine for yourself every morning. This is what I'm going to do to get ready to face the day, to face my kids, to be in a good place. And maybe if we have time at the end, Stephanie, you can share a little bit about your routine, if we want to give more practical. I think that you can, tea time is something we've talked about, and something that's gone in and out with my kids. When my, oh gosh, let me think. I got to do this by what house were we in? So when we had 5 children, we had a really good tea time rhythm where I would just gather them all up at 3 o'clock, and we'd literally have tea, or we'd have, we'd have tea. And actually that was the year that I gained a ton of weight when I was pregnant. We had way too many muffins. And I used that time, we would, talk about the saint of the day, or do a little bit of, we'd read a saint story. It was more time for religious ed, but like chat time. And we would invite people, we invite the kids' godparents over, or we invited, I remember we invited our priest over, and he was just so thrilled and told the whole world that he went to tea time at our house. And tea time went by the wayside when we had a lot of kids playing competitive soccer, and then we added girls dancing. I was just in the car all the time at that time, and we didn't do a lot of tea time. But tea time is really, I think you do it in the morning at breakfast. It's morning time. It's gather them in, and this is when we talk. And I make a concerted effort now, and this has been something the pandemic has been such a boon for. I just said that. But family dinner, dinner at the same time every day, sit down, eat at the table, talk to each other, no phones, that's a good thing. So that's something that everybody can do. And if you want to introduce a book or tell a story, or, play a word game or something like that at tea time or morning time or whenever it is, all the better. Art, find a print of an artist that you really like and put it on the refrigerator and talk about it and name the artist and just do it for a week. and then find another print by the same artist. Do that 4 weeks in a row, and you've done picture study. What else? A garden, definitely find someplace to dig in the dirt, go for a walk, get outside. It's summer. And it's one of the few things that we can do. Like, we can't go anywhere else. Go for a hike, go walk along the river, go to your favorite park, not your playground because you can't touch it. But, I get outside and observe what you see. We haven't talked about nature notebooks, and we will, but if you bring along a backpack full of sketchbooks and color pencils, and you let them use creek water to make their watercolors work, like, that's so fun. They love that. And then my kids end up in the creek, and we play hard when we're at the creek. So that's something you can do. If you're doing studies with your kids at home, try that short attention time. So just say, we're just going to sit here for 15 minutes. Just give me 15 minutes of undivided attention. You can get a lot done in 15 minutes. If you tell a kid a story, or if you read a kid a story, ask them to tell you what they heard, and play a round robin game. Let the youngest go first, tell me everything you know, and go all the way up to the older kids, and they have to add something new, so they know that more is being asked of them. Let's see. So I'm going to quick say something about 3 books at bedtime, because that's like my little trademark thing to say. But we did the bulk of our reading aloud when our kids were little, at bedtime. And we'd get 3 or 4 kids in a room, and everybody got to pick 3 books, and everybody listened to everybody's book. And I was in there for a good hour, and my kids know those picture books. Like, we read them, and some of them, I remember Nick picked from the Little House first readers, like, every night for like a year and a half. We had to travel with them. I knew them all by heart. If you missed a word, he'd jump all over you. And those books are falling apart. But that's some of my fondest memories. And so all my kids knew those books by heart, because he always picked the same book. But read aloud to your children. And we have a Zoom that we did with Sarah McKenzie from Read Aloud Revival. Go find it. It's Stephanie's YouTube channel. I think it's my YouTube channel too now. It's wonderful, and it's inspiring. And then go to our website, but read aloud. Everybody can. And that's a great way to start helping your kids be more attentive, and less distracted. So those are just some things to get you going until we talk next week.
No, that's really good. You can find our YouTube channels, by the way. I think yours is linked on your website, elizabethfoss.com. It's also Instagram. It's not anywhere. Elizabeth, oh my goodness, I need to be your PR person. I'm hiring myself.
I don't know, or maybe you need to just like tell Katie how to be my PR person. I just really need a PR person, and
we will find out.
Yeah.
I think it's linked to her Instagram somehow. Mine is on my Instagram, and it's the same. Well, yeah, we'll find it.
Let's go to Stephanie's. It's at Stephanie's. It's fine.
We're gonna fix that by week 2. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, this was so good. I don't think we're gonna take questions because we've gone over an hour, and we want to be respectful of your time. We want you to come back next Thursday, where we're gonna unpack more. Do you want to give a little teaser for what you're gonna talk about next week?
If I could remember what chapter 3 was.
What's chapter 3?
Colleen, what's chapter 3? What comes next? I think it's literature and learning to read. I'm pretty sure. Maybe
it is. Yep. Teaching reading, teaching writing. The art of language.
We'll dig into living books.
The art of language arts.
Thank you, Mina. Also, I think we're gonna try. Is there a way to save the chat, Stephanie?
Mm-hmm.
No. Okay. I'm gonna try to copy it. Maybe. Yeah, that doesn't work. So try to read the chat, because Colleen's been in the chat answering questions and making notes, and I wish there were a way to save it. But we'll try real hard as we get into the subject areas to address some of the questions. It's hard to give you specific curriculum, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
but we can give you the big picture, and then we can make ourselves available as much as humanly possible to help you as we keep going.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right, so should we stop here? Or
Yeah.
do you want to take any questions? We're good here?
Yeah, I don't think we have, I mean, way past my bedtime.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna stop here.
I
We will
have
get
a good quote though. I think I have a good quote.
Okay.
Let's end with this. I have an Edith Stein quote that we can end with.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
So here's the thing. As you think about the crazy fall situation we have ahead of us, and you think about how you would ideally educate your child, then I think you need to think about the whole child and educating him all the way, spiritually, physically, all of it. So here's what Edith Stein has to say, and this is good for prayer. The small child, with its physical psychic disposition and its innate singleness of purpose, is delivered into the hands of the human sculptors. The fulfillment of his goal depends on whether or not they furnish the necessary formative materials for his body and soul.
Beautiful.
There you go. What is necessary? What are those necessary formative materials for body and soul?
Yeah.
So think about that over the next week, and we'll be back, I promise.
All right. So we are going to open registration for next week. So we have limited spots. So you have to register to get your spot for each call. You'll be able to do that hopefully tomorrow.
Yep, we'll get it up there tomorrow.
Instagram at Elizabeth Foss or mine at Stephanie Weinert. And we will continue to be talking about this on Instagram, maybe even on blogs. So we want to be journeying with you. We want to keep encouraging you. So please continue to follow us there, and we will share the latest information.
And you know, one more thing, Stephanie, people have asked when the book is going to be there, and they've said they wanted it yesterday. And we are trying so hard. And I am cautiously optimistic that we could have it out in the middle of August, which is like very soon, 3 weeks from now or so. But I would love your prayers for that. Like, could you please just pray for me, for the other people who are working on it, for all the little things that have to come together. I would be really grateful, because that's the only way it's going to happen.
Let's do it for sure. And then the other thing is, invite a friend to come with you next week, because there's a lot of people who would greatly benefit from hearing Elizabeth's wisdom and just being able to hear the book talked through. So invite a friend to come with you next week, and we will see you then. So God bless you all. Have a wonderful night.
Good night.
Good night.